Welcome. We are discussing the first two episodes in the House of the Dragon, and I am joined by the lovely Mair. I'm really excited that this is like the first time we get to talk about this, and then we get to talk about House of the Dragon, which is something we're both enjoying. So, Mair, if you want to introduce yourself.
So I'm Mair, and you will find me as Lady Mair Reads on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and I'm known for screaming about books online. It's basically my take, and I'll probably scream about House of the Dragon as well. So be prepared.
Yeah. I enjoy your screaming.
So many people say it, and I'm just kind of like, I'm just very passionate. It's just passion.
Yeah. Well, I think that really shows. Like, it's fun to see people like really enjoy stuff and have that passion show through.
I'm not going to lie, it's more of a hyperfixation / special interest of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Is just reading, writing, and you bring up a specific topic, and I'm just like all in. Especially when I'm at work and shouldn't be typing about stuff on Discord. I'm like, just quickly go through. It's like my boss is looking at me like, "Are you not going to go back to work?" I'm like, "In a minute, you'll be fine."
It's like, this is really important to get my opinion out there.
I have to do, yeah. I usually do voice notes on Instagram with a group of friends, but the one time I did a voice note on a Discord I was in, it shut the whole conversation down. So I was like, maybe I won't go back to voice notes. I was like, okay, maybe not. But anyway, it's fine.
Well, moving into House of the Dragon, let's first start with our history with Westeros. So, what was your first introduction? What you've watched the full Game of Thrones show? Have you read the books? All of that.
This is going back a few years because I don't realize how much time has passed. So basically, I heard about the show first, and I think I watched about the first 2 or 3 episodes and went, "This is good shit. I'm going to pick up the book." Bought the box set because apparently I was just like, "I'm going to love this shit," and then it became like, so then I read through the series. And then I started going for the show, and it was the last season or last 2 seasons. Me and my best friend would always make a time to always watch it together on a Monday night because she would house sit usually for a yard that I was at with my horse. And every Monday we'd kind of go in because they had Sky, they could record it, so we used to watch it on there. And that's sort of it. And then it took a while for me to get into House of the Dragon. I am currently reading Fire and Blood.
Nice.
Not very far in, but it's a book for the fans, not where I would start. It's interesting to know about the Targaryen history. Definitely very interesting. And I've already seen some spoilers, particularly about Rheanyra in House of the Dragon online. So I kind of know how that's going to end, but I don't mind. I still love it. Fucking amazing.
Well, I mean, it's still fun to watch, even if you know like where the stories end up.
It is. But also the way it's told, and especially if you go back to the books and how George R. R. Martin tells it, it's so fascinating to me. I'm just hooked. The only thing I struggle with is to get to Feast of Crows, slog. So next time you're going to read it, it's what I suggest. Read Feast of Crows and Dance of Dragons at the same time. Tandem read it.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard people talk, and then even like there's guides online of like how to read them together.
Yeah. Well, he originally wrote it as one book and was forced to split it into 2. So we split it, so you get King's Landing stuff, and then you get Daenerys stuff, basically.
Interesting.
That's how it's split. So, yeah.
I haven't decided yet how I'm going to read them the first time I go through them, because I was thinking maybe the first time I'd read them as separate books, and then like the next time I'd read them tandem.
Well, with Feast of Crows, most people's favorite characters don't appear in Feast of Crows. You don't get them. So you're kind of just going sitting there, characters in Feast of Crows. And so that's kind of where I really struggle. People tend to like a few new POVs that turn up, but I was a bit like, nah. I think I DNF'd it the first time and then went back to it again on audio, which helped me get through it, even though he cannot do women's voices. And the whole, how George R. R. Martin does like to go a bit explicit is a bit cringe.
Well, and I think the thing I noticed about audio too was the narrator doesn't always pronounce the voice or the character names consistently. So he'll say like the same character name like different ways in the same book.
Yeah.
And that was throwing me off a little bit.
I really wish they'd update the narrator. Really.
There's several books I wish that we would get a re-narration of them, and I think those are one of them.
Yeah. Do you know what would be really good? So this does something to do with Game of Thrones. The character in Game of Thrones, Ollie, narrates the Silver Blood Promise. So I'd have Ollie as the male narrator for Game of Thrones, and something like Kate Redding or Moira Quirk or Emily Rosella as the female version of Game of Thrones. That's how I'd do it.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Because there's so many characters, you can't have like all different narrators, but you could have two. I think that would go well.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't work if you had like a different narrator for each character, because then they probably have like different inflections for the other characters that are in their stories and might get a little confusing.
I think it's too big of a cast. Whereas if you have a male and a female, I think it worked really well.
Or we just get the characters or the actors from the show to narrate their characters in the book.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, that to have Kit read to you, that'd be cool. Anyway.
So I watched the show first before I read the books, and then I'm not even through the first series. So I'm currently reading A Clash of Kings, but I only watched the show 2 years ago.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm like really late to it. I don't know, like I guess I was like fairly new to fantasy, and I just like didn't think it sounded interesting. And I had like a coworker who was like super obsessed with it, and I was just like, our tastes usually aren't the same. Like I'm probably not gonna like that. And I was wrong because I love it. So I'm glad it came to it eventually. Actually, I was hearing discussion online comparing George R. R. Martin to Robin Hobb, and I was like, maybe I should try George R. R. Martin, because like I just keep seeing them compared, and I'm like, I'm curious now. Yeah. And I talked to my partner, and he was like, oh, let's just watch the show. So we started watching the show, and I fell in love with it, and then now I'm trying to go through the books.
No, definitely. And I do see the comparison to Robin Hobb and George R. R. Martin, but he's very dark, but his character's very compelling, even at such a short amount of time. And like the way he writes, it's very short as well, so he doesn't meander a lot. So you're not like Tolkien; he meanders a lot.
Yeah,
so you don't get any of that. But everything has a concise, and it's, if you're very into like the War of the Roses, which is what it's inspired by, definitely this. And I love War of the Roses and like Henry Tudor, and it's very political, but it's not boring political, which is just like another one that is like Game of Thrones. And I have it in front of me. This is book 2, Grace of Kings.
I need to get to
Trust me. Also, plug in Dragon Rider, Game of Thrones cross Aegon.
I have Dragon Rider on hold at my library. And that one's only one book, and it's shorter than Grace of Kings. Because, oh my gosh, Grace of Kings is long. But, like, I've heard good things, and I do trust you.
It is good. The first book is very much a setup, and it can come, it goes through, like, a massive amount of time with one book. So I've heard people say, like, if you're a bit struggling with that, just dive into book 2. But I loved book 1. So...
yeah,
take that what you will. There was just one bit at the end, a decision that was made that made me give it a 4.5 out of a 5. I didn't quite agree with the decision, but it was really good. I really liked it, so I recommend that. Go read it.
I have so many things to read, though.
Well, at least you have the audiobook in your country that isn't available over here.
Yeah, but I wasn't planning on reading the audiobook for that.
No, I wouldn't, because it's narrated by Michael Kramer.
Yeah. Usually when I see that, I'm like, I'll just read the book. That's fine.
The only time you'll get me to read a Michael Kramer book is if it's Stormlight. But then I just speed that up to like 2.75 speed. So
it's just... yeah, maybe after I finish the Song of Ice and Fire books.
I think that would be a good idea, because because obviously the way the Song of Ice, I'm not going to spoil it, but obviously it's sort of finished when you get to Dance of Dragons, and the way it ends, you're probably going to want more. So that would be the time I kind of go, okay, go for Grace of Kings.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Yeah.
So let's get into House of the Dragon. Season 2. What are your initial thoughts on the first 2 episodes? How's it comparing to season 1? All of that.
I think at the moment, I found season 1 more compelling. Oh, okay. But I did find the episode 1 of season 2, I was a bit meh on. but again, it did what it meant to. It was like a setup kind of episode. But then it was sort of met all the way through. But then you get to the very ending, and they killed the child, and I was like, oh, now you've got me, like really hooked. And the implications of that's going to be like the tipping stone of like the avalanche for the whole series.
Yeah,
for whole season. I guarantee you that.
Oh yeah.
And that was done different in the book, so I've heard, because Tim Hickson from Hello Future Me did a video about it, and he said like it goes about differently. It was more intent. It wasn't just they were fumbling through. They actually knew what they were doing and actually had a plan, which made it better. But I can see why they did it like this way though. But it was I enjoyed it. Season 2. What am I saying? Book 2. Season 2 was episode 2. Fucking hell! Why can't I talk? Episode 2 was a lot better because again, you start off with that, and then there's some character moments. Just get so intense in episode 2, especially with Daemon and Rheanyra.
Oh my gosh! I think that was my favorite scene in this season so far.
That was one of my favorite. Yeah. It started off a little bit clunky, where she completely bluntly called him out, as if like us readers couldn't see that he was grooming her. It was almost like this is definitely what's happening. But then as you go through the scene and everything, and Rhaenyra and like Matt Smith acting, he's got to be one of the best actors in that show.
I think they're both doing a great job, and even like Rhaenyra in episode 1, I thought she says like 5 words in the entire episode, and I thought her scenes were the most compelling in the entire episode. Like she really brings it, and she has like the presence and the facial expressions to like show what's going on, even if she's not saying anything.
Yeah, no, it really worked really well, because especially like as she was grieving her son as well, I was like, you're gonna make me cry.
I know.
I didn't cry. It was close. It was close. It was close. But that, and how they went through that, but also Daemon's reaction as well. I thought that was really, because a complete contrast. He was like, we've got to act. We've got to do this. We have to take, like, get back at them. But obviously he couldn't do it without Rhaenyra's permission, because she's the queen and everything. And as soon as she said it, he was like, I've got you, bitch. I'll make this decision. Fly straight away, get someone to do it, cocks up, as a typical man thing does, and then is suffering the repercussions for everything. After that, it's like all from his mistake, but yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting the way you're saying, just like he wants to act immediately. He doesn't want to like sit around. I think Aegon's pretty much the same way. I think Daemon is maybe more calculated, where Aemon is more like rash, but he also has like the same instincts of like, we have to act. I don't want to like sit around and do nothing. So
yeah, but there's also a massive age difference between those two as well.
Oh yeah.
So I'm really bad at picking all their name. They sound so similar. So I'm just going to call him the king. The Green's king. So his is a very childish reaction. It's probably the first time he's really dealt with grief as well, when you think about it, because like he wasn't particularly close to his father. And then he has his son, he has his wife, who is a little bit dumb as shit, to be fair. She's coming across a bit like that. And then loses his son, his heir, who he put everything on, who he's been told everything on. It's about legacy, it's about name, it's all about the mother. And then he's just gone, and he's like, what do I do? And then it's dealing with that, but also being king, realizing he has to like do something as well, and it just all kind of comes out. And that was, loved the scene where he was like bashing the model, the vizier, the model. I was like, that's so symbolic, symbolic, because it just like the way I'm thinking of how it's going to go is, because he's bashed it, it's kind of like showing his father's legacy, like what he did as king is just going to crash because of everything that's happened.
Yeah.
So.
And this was like the country that like his father was like building and trying to hold together, and then Aegon is just like smashing it apart,
destroying it out of ignorance and anger.
Yeah,
because I mean Targaryens are known for their anger. So
Everyone's a little bit hot-headed.
just
Some of them
just
are
a
more
little.
some of them are more calculated in their anger, and some of them are just letting it out. I want to circle back to your comment on Helena, but I want to keep talking about Aegon right here for a second. So,
Yeah.
I think something else about Aegon is he, compared to Daemon, is the second son, and he has been told no a lot, whereas I
Yeah.
don't think Aegon really has been told no ever. And yeah,
Yeah.
he did grow up maybe like Rhaenyra was going to be the heir and not him or whatever, but I still think like he was the oldest son and he does carry that oldest son privilege in this realm of like people do expect him to be a leader and he can just say whatever and they have to listen to him. So I think maybe that uh obviously Daemon's older, but on top of the fact that like Daemon has had to work for things a little bit more than Aemon has.
Yeah, but I also think Damon knows how to work the court and how to manipulate people a
Mm-hmm.
lot better, and he knows when to speak out, when to act as well, over when to reserve himself and to act later. Whereas I think
Yeah.
like Aemon is just like, I'm gonna act now. And it's just ignorance. Like they put kings on the thrones like way too young. Like you say, they're very privileged, never been told no. So as soon as they have like, whereas his hand, the high tower, he just tells him something and says, don't be an idiot. He's trying to teach him. And he's like, I'm the king. I do what I want. I know what I'm doing. And then he makes this blundering mistake in episode 2 and hangs all the rat men. And he's like, what the fuck have you done? You've now turned the common people against us. Whereas you went to work them to put them, for you and against Rhaenyra and stuff like. So it's definitely interesting seeing how people would. I mean, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do if I got a crown suddenly put on my head. Like,
Right.
situations. But I'm going to mention this. I hate Cole.
Oh, I do too.
He was such a bitch in that series. Especially, right, we're going to talk about the twins.
Okay.
Because going to his twin, it's not Eric, the other one. Anyway, where he's got a muddy cloak, right? He's trying to eat his dinner. And then he's being like, you need to go, like, change and being a dick. And then stopping him and then being like, actually, I want you to go and try and kill Rhaenyra. That's a stupid plan. That's not going to work. I know it's a twin. It's not going to work. But the king believes it's going to work because Cole has said it and Cole's done it. And then you can see, like, the hand is like, what? You're surrounded by idiots. You can see that going through his head. I am surrounded by idiots. And it is true. It's the most stupid thing ever. And Cole's just, like, fumbling through. He's just the worst. I
think the thing I hated even like the most about that scene is you realize that Cole is maybe responsible. He could maybe have some responsibility and he's just shifting the blame and like throwing that on someone else. And then what I found kind of interesting too is because in some ways I feel like and it does have to do with like his position. He is the head of the Kingsguard and whatever, but I've kind of thought too like he almost like his cloak and everything, it's almost like too pristine and perfect. And then the thing that he's like pointing out and someone else is like, oh, your cloak's dirty. And I feel like it's him trying to keep an outward appearance of like perfection when he's actually dealing with like maybe a little bit of guilt. He's not dealing with it. He might have a little bit, but he's throwing it on other people and trying to like control other people instead of actually dealing with it himself.
I think it's a good contrast to show like on the outside he's this, so like with the cloak and stuff, but on the inside actually he's not a good person because we don't really know who he is as a person yet because he wasn't a massive role in season 1 of what I remember. He did a little bit obviously with fucking Alicent. I don't you can tell I've been reading
Game wedding.
I know, but like we don't really know so much about him.
And then he gets named like the head of the Kingsguard. Like
I know, like he has no experience, and it's just entitlement. He's like, I'm protected because the Queen will probably protect me. Is probably what he's thinking. rather than actually, I think at a second's notice, Alicent will just go, actually, I might behead you to save my skin. And she doesn't have as much power as she thinks she has, nor does he think she has.
Mm-hmm.
Which is definitely interesting. But I really, really want him to die a most painful death. Really do.
Yeah. I think
Dragon fight, eat by a dragon, I don't care.
He's definitely like I'm gonna say my most hated character in the show so
Yes.
far, and I feel like in some ways you could draw a lot of parallels between like Aegon and Joffrey, but I think they're making Aegon more sympathetic, where Joffrey was just like evil, and I think
Yeah.
Kristen Cole is, I'm going to say, like more comparable of like this is my most hated character the way Joffrey is, way more so than Aegon.
I was going to say, I hate Kristen Cole more than Joffrey. And
I don't know if I'm there yet, but he's my
don't.
Jose character in this show.
So I found Joffrey was compelling, even though I don't agree with anything he does. He was compelling to watch, compelling to read about. Kristen Cole, I'm like, I just hate everything about you. There's nothing compelling about you, but I just want you to die.
That's
rather
fair.
rather than like wanting Joffrey to die because what he's doing to Sansa and like the characters I like.
Yeah. I guess there was a little bit whenever you're watching like Joffrey, you're like, oh my gosh, what's he going to do next? Whereas you're right, like Sir Kristen Cole like doesn't have that aspect yet.
No, but also as well, like Joffrey was a kid, so you have a little bit more of a leniency with him. But with Kristen Cole, he's an adult. He's head of the Kingsguard. He's meant to know what he's doing, and he's making stupid decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, like with Aegon the King, he's making stupid decisions, but he's still a kid. So
Yeah.
you give him a little bit of leniency with that because, oh, you're a kid, you're learning. But when you see an adult do it, you're like, nah, you're just being stupid as fuck. You know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was all good.
Well, and I think what's interesting. So let's talk about Alicent a little bit. Alicent, like you said, that she doesn't have the amount of power she thinks she has, and I think throughout these first two episodes, we kind of see her still like trying to hold on to the little bit of power she does, because she talks about like trying to control Aegon, and like we have to keep him in check and we have to control him, and they want him on the throne because he's the one who has like the claim to the throne, but she still wants the power of the throne. So if she can control him, then she still has that power. And like we see her and Otto talking about how to control Aegon. So I think they're still, trying to maintain the power that they had previously.
Yeah, but also if you look at it, it's very similar to Cersei. But the way Cersei went about it, she felt she was owed it because again, she went twin with Jaime. She's like, I can do whatever you do. Alicent is a bit more clever in how she does it. And she definitely understands some impacts and some decisions that are going to make, but she also really heavily relies on her father as well for advice, which definitely shows it. But at the same time, you can kind of see the worry in her as well, especially like with what Rhaenyra is going to do, because they used to be friends, like which must be it's quite a lot, especially to have like a friend turn on you and go like, nah, I'm going to kill you, or be like, I'm going to marry your dad and then I'm going to make my son the king. So so there's definitely that sort of playing in her mind, and also she knows her children quite well. So she knows Aegon is king, but he's also not going to be the best king at the moment. So there's
I think she knew that whenever she was like in the previous season, when she was like, you have to take this role. Like she knew he didn't want to, he wasn't ready for it, but like it's what had to happen for her to maintain her power.
Yeah, but I quite like that sort of. It's similar, but it's also, again, going back to the Cersei. Like you see Cersei's motivation, but with Alicent, it's almost like a slightly different take on it, with like the same motivation behind it. Which I thought it was interesting. But her decision to keep banging Cole, don't get it, hate it. I'm like, no, he's not even that hot. No.
Yeah. I mean, they're both making bad decisions.
I mean, yes. But the one who's going to come out poorly out of that decision is going to be Kristen Cole.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
100%. because I don't know when it will happen, because I think this has been renewed for season 3 already. So I don't quite know when. I don't think this series is going to go as long as Game of Thrones did.
No, I don't think so, but I think there has been talks about like 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, I think 4, 5 might be stretching it. I haven't obviously read the part like in the book that is loose. I mean, it's like I think 5 to 6 chapters in Fire and Blood is basically House of the Dragon. But the way Fire and Blood tells it, like you can tell so many seasons through each chapter. It tells, so I can kind of see it, but it would definitely be really interesting to see where this goes, especially with like her, especially with Kristen Cole and the decision they're going to make. Like, don't tell me her dad don't know. Like, surely he knows.
Well, I think he's trying to keep himself, like he has a purposeful blind spot there. Yeah. And because like even Alicent came to him in episode 2 and he was like, I don't want to hear about it. So I think like there are some things that he's like purposely blind to, like he doesn't want to deal with that.
It's like, I don't want to know, which I totally get it, because like, what father would want to know about daughter's sex life, really? But at the same time, it's like, this is going to completely backfire.
Well, I'm really interested because at the end of this episode, Otto was talking about, he said he was going to go somewhere and then Alicent told him to go to Highgarden, but he's leaving King's Landing for now. And I think that's going to be really interesting because Alicent seemed to really rely on Otto for a lot of, you know, the decisions or even support or whatever, talking about like how to get Aegon to do certain things. And the fact that Otto's not going to be there, I think is going to impact Alicent. But the new hand is her lover. So maybe it's not going to impact her as much as I think. Maybe she'll just like lean on him harder for support. I don't know.
I've got a feeling Cole will make a decision and Alicent will go, that's a stupid decision. Try to persuade Cole not to do it. Cole will go, I'm the man, and just do it anyway.
Oh,
that's
probably.
Where I think that's going to go.
They might be more conflict now because he has more power.
Well, this is where I think episode 3 is really going to be like a lot more conflicts going through, because it's only 8 episodes, isn't it? I think, yeah. So, which would then drag us all the way through to the rest of it, I think. So I think episode 3 is going to be, compared to 1 and 2, will probably be like the best one until we get to the end, which I can't wait for episode 3. I really hope it's going to be like people making really bad mistakes. I want to know what Daemon went to do.
Same.
Because just 1 second, the armor, he was it. I love that. And then like the fierce look on his face as he's riding out on that dragon.
Also, anytime they're riding on dragons.
Yeah. But also like riding, and you're like, this is what I find so compelling about Daemon, right? It's you don't quite know what he's going to do. You think you know him because he will do anything. He will kill children and not fucking care, right? He killed his own wife so he could be with Rheanyra. And everything he wants to do, he does want power. He wants to be king. He wants to be like the prince of the queen. So he has that kind of power still. But then something happens, and sometimes you're like, oh, maybe you do have a heart and you do care. But then he'll do something, and you're like, completely what you never expected he would do. And that's just where I'm like, that's where I really like him.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. He's a horrible person. And yeah.
Well, he's a compelling character to watch.
He's one of my favorites. One of my best lines, season 1. What was it? Where they went to Rheanyra first declared, I think, for Queen or something, and Daemon was there standing out with her and went to meet like the guys and something about you cunt of a king, and I was like, I'm sold. The best. And weirdly enough, I heard of that line on TikTok before I saw it. House of the Dragon. I was like, yeah. Love that line. Love that. And the delivery. Oh, everything about it. He's one of the best compelling characters for sure on that series.
Yeah. I found I'm gonna say going back to the argument scene between them. I'm like, that's the scene I'm like most interested in rewatching, or just like rewatching the episode 2 and like paying attention to things more, because I did notice after I want to watch, like, I'm gonna say, the blocking of the argument, like as they like walk towards or away from each other, because I noticed on my first watch that once Rhaenyra said, she like asked him, "Do you accept me as your queen?" He only moved away from her. He never like walked towards her again in that
Yeah.
conversation. And I find that stuff really interesting. And I'm like curious to like just go back and like rewatch that and then see what he's up to
No,
next.
because that is interesting as well. Because I take that as if he doesn't really want to give the answer. Because if it was something like his brother, he'd probably go, "Yeah, no." But because it's Rhaenyra, because he married her and he's always wanted her, mainly probably started off for like nefarious reasons, but then grew to be like, more. He's probably like, if I tell you this, it's not going to, one, reflect well on me, but also, I think he still harnessed some feelings for Rhaenyra a little bit. But then he's like, but I really want the crown. And I will do anything to defeat the Greens, is probably what he's thinking as well a lot of the time, especially to have revenge on his lost child.
Mm-hmm.
On that
Oh
side of
yeah.
it. So there's so much complications, and like the way they, and just how they act and look at each other. How he was just so stony silent through most of it and just let her vent and like shout at him. And I'm like, yeah, that was one of the best scenes, I have to say.
Well, and I think it's like, I'm going to say a compelling storyline too, because like in season 1, he was a competitor for the throne. And then once they got married, you're like, oh, this eliminates the competition because they're married now. But actually, they're still in competition within their marriage of like
Yeah.
who is in charge. So it hasn't really solved that. It's just, I guess, put them on the same path for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, especially looking at Rhaenyra when she was younger to how she is now, is a really great contrast, especially within the relationship with Daemon. Because I think that's going to be a big conflict coming up as well. Because if they're divided, how is it going to work out between her winning the war if they're not, if they're not thinking straight?
Yeah.
Like together as one. So Daemon probably go do something else, and Rhaenyra would be like, "Fuck's sake!" But then she would get the blame for it because she's the queen. So,
I mean, at the same time, we are seeing like some divisions in, I'm going to say, the green side as well, with Aegon not accepting Otto as a hand anymore, and the stress that's going to put on like him and Alicent and all of that. So I feel like both sides we're starting to see like some division within their own team.
oh, for sure, which I can't wait to watch that, especially with the green side. I'm like, please give me mistakes that is just going to make you crash and burn. Really want that. But yeah, no, it's good. Can we talk about the dog?
Yes.
How dare they do that?
Oh my gosh. He was so mean to the dog.
But he was why did he take the dog with him in the first place? 2, where was the dog in the actual scene? Right? When they killed the kid, because he wasn't really there all the time. It was just implied.
Yeah, I assumed that he had the dog to help him like sniff out the rats.
That's what I thought. I thought the dog was there for a reason, but then he
their
didn't take the dog in with him. I think the dog was only there as like a heartstring pull moment for what happened in episode 2.
The second episode. Yeah.
It was that moment where like the dog looked up at his dead owner hanging from the battlements and whined, and I was like, no, how dare you? How dare you do that? No, you don't play with my emotions like that.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I don't know why they decided not to take the dog with them the whole way. Because he kicked the dog. That's what I was saying. Like, he wasn't nice to his dog.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the Saints don't. When you bring a dog into it, it has to survive and be fine. Otherwise, I'm going to cry.
Well, the dog survived.
The dog survived, but it was missing his owner, which made me sad.
Yeah.
Which made me sad. But
yeah.
Yeah, I can see it was kind of a clever ploy to do that a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm just gonna, it's a cute dog. I'd pet that dog.
It was a cute dog.
It was a really cute dog.
I want to circle back to talking about Helena. I don't think Helena's stupid, and I think she can maybe read that way mostly because she's very quiet, and she definitely doesn't seem to have, I'm going to say, like much supportive people around her. But I think she knows more than she lets on. So I don't know if it's like she's intentionally, or it could just be unintentionally um,
This is
seeming
where
less
I'm a little,
smart.
yes, I'm a bit on the fence because, like, is it the actor, which I'm not quite sure if I believe that, or is it the character or the direction behind it? Because it does seem like she has very, very little to do, and she's just there, and
Hmm.
then you know stuff happens, and she just makes some comments that make me just think like, what are you doing? What are you saying? It doesn't come across as like very intelligent per se. But I have to say, the scene straight after the butcher of the kid, and then the scene where they're riding in the carriage was done really well because you could
Oh yeah,
definitely see her like fighting with a lot of stuff, and
yeah.
I found it was very. It was a choice, especially from the mother, and to show her preference in a sense that she would save the daughter, not the son. I thought, that was quite good. Although in the book, I know she was meant to have two sons and she had to choose between the two, which made it have more of an impact, which I kind of wish they almost did in this because it would
Hmm.
give her more of an emotional impact to pick between her two kids, and then the one she wanted to save, they end up killing anyway. So, and they end up like gagging Alicent and killing the guards. There was more going on in the book than what they actually went through in the show, which made me go a bit like it because it's a bit stupid, just like fumbling through the castle. Even though I really, really wanted them to try and fight. Is it Aegon with the eye patch?
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't
so many
remember
similar
his name.
names. So many similar names. I don't. I'm really
Uh,
bad. I'm kind of don't. Yeah, but I thought it'd been so interesting to see if they could have gotten him and what the fight would have come about. But obviously they didn't, because obviously that's not how it went in the book. But that would have been interesting, especially like he's another compelling character. He is like how he's so stoic and quiet and mysterious, but then he's really good
mhm.
fighter. But then also he killed the son, and I don't think he meant to do it. And he's like, oh shit,
Yeah,
yeah, for that.
but he seems. I mean, he says he lost his temper there, but as far as like other scenes with him, he seems more calculated, and he seems more to like trying to figure out like what their next move should be.
He is, and I think he's definitely one who I would. You'd almost you don't really compare them against Daemon, but they have similar attributes. Apart from that, he's happy just being the sword. He's
Hmm.
happy just wanting to fight. He doesn't really want to rule, and he's there for his brother, which is a big difference to what Daemon was with his brother. Which I find again it's definitely interesting, but I can't wait to see what's going to happen next after that. Especially with him, he's another one that is high on my list of compelling characters.
But I'm just gonna circle back to Helena one more time.
Yeah.
I think in season one, or episode one of season two, whenever she says like, "Oh, I'm not scared of the dragons. I'm scared of the rats." Like it seems like a dumb thing to say, but obviously by the end of the episode, it's like she was right to be scared of the rats or the rat catchers or something. So I feel like there's more hidden underneath the surface than what we're seeing of Helena yet. But I do agree with you that she hasn't had much of a role and she just kind of seems to be like in the background so far. So I'm interested if the fact that we're getting to see like glimpses of there might be more beneath the surface, if they're going to do anything more with that or not.
Yeah, I see it. I took that rat comment more now that I knew about the rats was more of a foreshadowing of what was going to happen rather than her actually being intelligent and knowing there were rats. That's how, more of like from a writer's standpoint rather than actually a character standpoint. Does that make
Maybe.
sense?
I don't know. I just felt, I mean, I see what you're saying from a writer's standpoint. It could just be
Yeah.
foreshadowing. But I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that she said it at all in the episode, like obviously we was like, well, because as soon as she
Yeah.
said it, I'm like, the rats are important. I don't know why, but the rats are important.
Yeah, well, there's that. But again, you know, you have to look at it like you need to set up. You can't just have nothing and then all of a sudden this is going to happen. You have to show a setup, like promise and payoff. So that's how I took it. But you could also be right. She could also have a bit more intelligence than she does let on. I think I'd have to see how she goes through the next few episodes to really see if my thoughts will change on her or not.
Well, and I will say, I don't know if any of this is influenced by I'm trying not to watch videos on YouTube that compare it to the book too much because I'm just kind of wanting to like see what the show does and then I can go back and read the book later. But I have seen like thumbnails and titles that allude to the fact that like maybe she's having visions of the future. And I don't know if this is people speculating or if this is something from the book. I've not clicked on them, so I don't know.
I don't. Do you know what her original house name is?
She's Aegon's sister, isn't she?
Is she Aegon's sister?
She's a Targaryen, I think.
It looks like she. I thought she was. I'm not that versed in lore, so I don't know all about it. But probably because when you look at the Targaryens, they have dragons, which hints they've got some kind of magic in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be as far-fetched to say that she would have visions. There was something that was alluded to in Fire and Blood, but I don't want to say too much about it. About one character knowing more about the future than probably others would. But, you know, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
I guess we'll find out. Yeah, I mean, I am curious if they do anything with that or not, or do anything more with her character or not.
I want them to do more with the character, because at the moment I'm just very indifferent on her. Because she doesn't have a bigger role and she's not showing that much intelligence. But I'm hoping she will step up and become a bigger role. But again, it depends what's going to happen after, because obviously she just lost her son. She's trying to raise her daughter. There's everything that's going to be the impact of that whole scene. But I really hope they do give her a bit more agency. Because at the moment, she's just a bit meh.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the things we're probably going to see more throughout the show, and they're already showing it, is just how much this war is tearing families apart. And I think they really like the two twins are kind of like symbolic of that we're going to have family members on different sides, that we're going to be like tearing families apart. We're going to have like a brother fighting brother, all of that. And we kind of already have that with like our main character, like Rhaenyra versus Aemon or Aegon. Aemon is the guy with the eye patch. Aegon is the one who's
there.
king.
We go.
We're already seeing it. Like they're half siblings and they're fighting over the throne. But then it's going to expand, not just these two characters who are fighting for the throne, but it's like the whole way down, even like the people surrounding them.
That is a good point, because you get the two twins, the two Kingsguard twins. One's Eric and one's, I've forgotten the other guy's name. But yeah, you get those two and they're having to fight against, because they're on opposite sides and they're brothers and they like each other, and which it's I found that really interesting, really compelling. And that fight scene at the end, though, like especially how they filmed it and how I think I knew who was who throughout the whole thing, but a lot of people say you didn't really know, because I thought the guy who was the real Eric was the guy who got slashed in the knee.
Yeah,
that's how I took it.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna say I was a little confused at the end of like who won, because the one brother killed the other one first, and I was like,
the real Eric won.
Mm-hmm.
But then he killed himself over probably grief and obviously like, oh shit, I brought this upon you, like
right.
So then he fell on his sword.
Yeah, whenever he did that, that's when I was like, oh, okay, that's the real Eric. But
yeah,
like right at first, I was like, wait, which one is this? So I think for the most of it, I was like, okay with which one's which, but then there was just like I was like a little bit unsure because he
Yeah.
could have like pretended, but the fact that he like then like purposely killed himself, I was like, oh, obviously that's not the one who was out to kill the queen.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it also solves the question of like who is who, because now they're both dead, so that threat against the queen is just gone. But the way they choreographed that, I thought was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like cutting to scenes and it darkened this, and then you start to think, and then you go through, you're like, who is who? Just from how the angles they were going, they weren't really showing it, and it was just definitely interesting and a really good fight scene, definitely.
I think one of the things, because one of the things I definitely noticed in this is we have dragons on both sides of the war, and so I'm like, we're gonna have dragon battles, but actually, I think I'm assuming those will be compelling. I'm assuming we're gonna get them and they're gonna be compelling. But
There
in some ways,
probably
like
will be,
these
yeah.
smaller fight scenes are also just as compelling because it's not just like big war all the time. It's like it's also like the smaller impacts, the ripple effects that are also.
I've really liked the ripple effects, and yeah, but going back to the dragon thing, I think we're going to get a dragon fight, but I don't think it's going to go the way we expect.
That's fair. Well, and I guess we had a dragon chase at the end of season 1. So I guess you could call that a dragon fight.
That was a really good chase. Not going to say I really liked how that was done, but because dragons, they're big beasts, and I've been going on a deep dive with friends about dragon lore and everything. So and it's exerting how much control you have over them when their instincts kick in, because they're in like a fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the dragon, the older the dragon, you'd assume the harder it would be to kill, and that would actually dominate, which proved true at the end of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, and it's very much a bloody, like, difficult battle, especially to film and and all of that going on. But where is my thought train going? I think it's going to be not what anybody would actually expect, and I think on both sides they're going to want to avoid it for as long as possible because they only have so many dragons.
That's true. That's true.
Only have so many dragons, and it's like you have a dragon. If the other side doesn't have a dragon, it's very easy to go and burn down a city and say, like, I'm now going to be here, and threat the dragon and threaten to all of this. But when both sides have dragons, that's when it gets more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're kind of like, now you've really got to think, you can't just use the dragons as an answer to everything. But again, it depends on how many sides have got dragons as well. Like what kind of dragons, I think you could be clever with dragons on how to do things, like especially want to be sneaky and like sneak up on people with dragons, and you can obviously get to allies a lot quicker and relate and stuff like that, which would be interesting. But I do, on a viewer standpoint, I would like to see one. I really would like to see one. Whether we'll get it in this season, I don't know.
I don't know if we'll get it in this season. And like in some ways, I kind of expected like, oh, at the end of last season, obviously a war started. We're gonna have war in season 2, and I think we are. But I think Game of Thrones has always been like more focused on the political maneuvering than the battle scenes, and we've definitely gotten some good battle scenes, but it's been a lot of like the behind the scenes and the maneuvering and whatever. So I think just like that, we're gonna get a lot of that here.
Yeah,
well, that is really compelling stuff. So like I'm fine with that.
Well, the thing is with Game of Thrones, right? It was a bigger story because there were so many more characters, but there's also stuff going on in the wall up in the north with the walkers. There was obviously the political stuff, like Ned Stark dying, Robert Baratheon suddenly dying. So many factions just kind of split into different things. So many story lines going through. Whereas with House of the Dragon, it's just focusing on the Targaryens. So there is other stuff happening around what we're actually seeing in House of the Dragon, but they're not showing us because that's not the point of the TV show. It's very much House of the Dragon, how they end up coming to the throne, dying from the throne. The war that created simply because of what Alicent said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it passed over Rhaenyra for her son because she wanted him to be the heir and stay in power, even though it was actually Rhaenyra who was, and it would have gone down that line instead. So, and when the crown comes involved, all you've got to do is look at War of the Roses, King Tudor, like the English king monarchs, and literally see how uncle would kill nephew, brother would go after brother. So it's, which is really, which I fucking love. I love it to shits.
It makes for a very compelling story.
It's definitely interesting, and it's definitely like, because obviously Game of Thrones based on War of the Roses, you're definitely seeing some similar kind of conflict with House of Dragon is becoming based on. I don't quite know how much they're going to add or take away from the show compared to the book. I have to read that particular section they're obviously basing the show on, but it would definitely be interesting to see what happens to them, how they would change, what they would add to it, to add, you know, depth and storyline, but still keeping it very much about the Targaryens.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, I don't know if they're going to do anything more with this, because at the beginning they did of season 2, we were at the wall in the north. But I didn't know if that was more of just like a callback nostalgia, or if we're like really going to get to see, because I was thinking we're going to get to see more of what's going on in other parts of the world. But
yeah, potentially. I took that.
They haven't really done anything else in these first 2 episodes aside from just that opening sequence.
No, so this is where it gets difficult. So let me just address the war, like the war thing. That took me, because obviously they're not meant to be in conflict. But I believe from Game of Thrones it was mentioned one particular commander of the Wall of the Night's Watch took troops to fight down in a different war at some point.
Oh, okay.
I could be completely misremembering this. Don't take my word as gospel. But to me, that scene showed that he was, I think he said for Rhaenyra, it showed, I can give you these many troops to help you win your war. So that's what that was showing. But also, I think it was also a reminder of this still exists. There is other stuff, and you go up to the north and stuff. They might not have a massive part to play in this, but it's still there in the background. What was the second part of what you said? I've completely forgotten.
I was just saying they haven't really done anything else. I wasn't sure if it was like nostalgia or if they're going to expand on any of that more in the show, because we haven't gone back to anything like that in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if it is. I think it's, at the moment, it's going to stay very contained on Dragonstone and King's Landing. I think, especially through the first bit of the season, because this is where I was going with this. These first few episodes are going to be set up. Like, especially episode 1, where it was meh, holy fucking shit, you've killed a baby. That is then going to roll all the way through the thing, and it's really like, what does Rhaenyra do to counteract that? And then you get Daemon's, you know, like, what is he going to do at the beginning of episode 3, because he's so much like, you don't know. So I think the first few episodes are really going to be a ball of setup, and then I think from 4, 5, 6, especially 6, 7, 8, it's going to be quite a lot of boom, boom, boom.
Oh yeah, I bet.
From reacting to everything that's gone on. And I think sometimes if you watch back, you go, oh, that was mentioned here, but they did it here, which I find really, really interesting and really, really compelling. And I'm really hoping that, again, it's going to end, because it ended on like a dragon chase. It's going to end on something bigger at the end of this season. Whether or not it will include a dragon fight or not will be come into question, but it will have to be big, because again, House of Dragon, dragons are going to have to be involved, but it's to what extent are they going to be using the dragons, which would be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to end this. Thank you for coming on and chatting with me.
Fun.
Again, if you want to find Mair, you can find her at Lady Mair Reads on all the socials, and I'll have her socials linked in the description of this. And see you in another video. Happy reading.